So, as most of you would know or will learn in the future, The Incredibles is my personal favorite animated feature film. As I think it's flawless, I, like everyone, was stoked about a sequel, even if I knew my expectations were a lot higher than everyone else's. And then, when I finally saw Incredibles 2, I really still liked it. The super fire fights were epic, the interactions the family had were still great, and the raccoon Jack Jack scene might have been my favorite scene in any movie of 2018, right next to Vanellope's I Want song in Wreck-It Ralph 2. But is this movie a match for the original? No. Even if the second somehow got a better audience review score, the original is better in every way. How? 1. The dialogue. Well, the obvious first. The family dynamic in the second movie is just as good as the dynamic in the first, but the philosophy in the second is a lot more barren. The whole point of the first movie was that humanity didn't need the supers anymore, and the first 20 minutes expresses why and how it affects the Pars, especially Bob. Because of this brilliant opening, every time the family gets a chance to use their powers for good, we really sympathize with them as they get to help others, which is something they haven't had the chance to do in a while. I love the part where Bob is offered a job to protect and looks over his newspaper from the glory days. Does Incredibles 2 compare? Eh. Obviously, there's no magical beginning like the first, but other than the 3 or 4 minutes of the villain explaining why superheroes make them weak, the focus is less about supers in general and focuses more on being an amazing action movie with neat visuals instead of a thought provoking cinematic experience. Number 2, the villains. This is another aspect of the movie where the Incredible wins by a landslide. Syndrome is a perfect villain in my humble opinion. He is revealed in the opening to be an annoying fanboy, already making you dislike him at least a little. And then he comes back as a twist villain towards the middle of the movie. And while it's not an amazing twist, it gives you even more upset that the kid who pestered Bob is now the ultimate villain with amazing gadgets that are super creative. Syndrome also ties perfectly into the plot. His plan to trick the public into thinking he's a hero ultimately goes back to the central idea of, do we need supers? Like I mentioned before, his gadget is practical, creative, and so overpowered that it gives him a stage presence like no other. My only real issue with Syndrome is how the one character that is integral to the plot, that uses his mind instead of being gifted with powers, ends up being the villain. Oof. How does Incredibles 2 compare? The screenslaver makes no sense. She actively helps her brother bring back the supers and then works so hard to put them back into the shadows. If she hadn't helped her brother, she could have gotten what she wanted. She's also the most predictable villain. She speaks with low enthusiasm all throughout the film, making her a weird contrast to her brother. I came in knowing she was going to be the villain. She's not the worst villain ever. She's a murderer lady, but at least she won't let her brother die. There's a scene where Elastigirl looks through her secret lair, and it's really scary and cool. Her powers, at least, are pretty original. She does tie back a tiny bit to the plot. It's just that she knowingly works against herself the whole movie and then works so hard to undo the damage she's done. And no, the room does not shake when you see her, unlike Syndrome. After this, you may be wondering, does Incredibles 2 match the original in any way? Well, the action. This may be a controversial statement, but I think the action in Incredibles 2 matches up pretty well with the action in The Incredibles. Incredibles 2 has a really entertaining Elastocycle scene and has a jaw-dropping scene with the screenslaver where the animation soars, but is held back by the lackluster Underminer fight and the kind of underwhelming climax, with the exception of Void's creative use of her powers. In The Incredibles, every villain interaction is consistently better than Incredibles 2, but I feel like the Elastocycle is the best action portion in any of these movies. Number 4, character growth. In The Incredibles, every character goes through significant growth. I noticed specifically Violet and Bob. You can tell that Bob misses his old life during the glory days. The only time he's happy is when he's fighting crime or saving someone. He's bored at his office, he's frustrated at home, and he loses his cool when he has a chance to save someone but can't/won't. Violet begins the movie super introverted and closed off, but as the story continues and she gains more confidence in herself, her abilities and what she can do, she's more happy and more extroverted and confident. She even asks a boy on a date like it was nothing. Again, how does Incredibles 2 compare? No one goes through growth in this movie except America, which even then is just them accepting supers. The Pars act no different at the end of the movie than they did in the beginning. No one changes even a little bit permanently. I'm actually very surprised to hear that some people like Incredibles 2 more, and by no means do I want to say that my opinion is worth more or that these people are wrong, because they're definitely not. I just hope I've proven my point to everyone as to why I personally think The Incredibles is a more engaging, better constructed, and also ultimately a better movie than Incredibles 2.